Order, do you have any public comment? Here, none, we'll go to the topic for discussion and technical upgrades, text messages for court opinions. Melissa, Judge Guido.
I don't want to hear about the text messages, all I heard is that we're reaching a crisis situation with court reporters. Apparently they're not putting them out anymore. And as we lose them, we're not able to replace them. And we're really behind right now. As you know, we've got another judge coming on board. They tell me there's something out there called a court recorder that is not as well trained as a court reporter. Go ahead.
There is an option to have court recording done by technology. It is a program that has to be put in, and that has to be run by a position, per Pennsylvania law, by a position called a court recorder. I think we can call it whatever we want, but that's the gist of it. Where that software is monitored and tracked by a court recorder. They kind of do everything that a court recorder does, they just don't do this part in the courtroom. But they have to log in the system. We went and saw a demo in Adams County last week. They had it up and running in their dependency courtroom. And they monitor who's speaking, they mark the log of who judge is speaking, defense counsel speaking. So they're kind of making notes the whole way through while not doing the, with the steno machine. So we've gotten information on having that system installed, but there are some technical difficulties associated with that. The only courtroom that is currently technologically capable, per the FTR company, of having the software installed and able to run is courtroom 2, which most recently had some upgrades put in. The other courtrooms require additional processing space and some additional tech. I have a quote, I don't even begin to understand every piece of it. But in order for this software to work in those courtrooms, there's a certain minimum level of upgrade that has to be done to them. But courtroom 2 is currently ready, and we also want to have it just hard installed in courtroom 7 when it's built. We had 2 openings for court reporters. I was only able to fill one of them. So we still have a vacancy. We had a vacancy earlier in the year that was filled, and she left for Dauphin County. Dauphin County pays $6,000 more a year to start than we do. It's kind of a no-brainer for her. So we were filling that position plus another vacancy due to a retirement, but I've only been able to fill one of them. The other is still sitting vacant.
And my understanding is they're just not training court reporters anymore, so we don't have the schools out there to hire them. So the wave of the future is court recording. What we're asking today is authorization to get it in courtroom 6 that's set up for 2. And then in courtroom 7, as it's being built, have that set up. So that'll give us 2 court recorders as opposed to court reporters.
And our plan would be that with the 7th judge, instead of requesting another court reporter position, we're pretty much done trying to get court reporters. We get 1 applicant, 2 applicants, and some of them aren't even qualified as court reporters. Would be to request a court reporter for the 7th judge, as well as taking the current vacant existing court reporter position. We need to find new names for these people. And turn it to a court recorder position. And as each of the court reporters retires or leaves, we would do the same transition. But that would also involve having each courtroom outfitted with this software and programming and hardware as we lose those court reporters.
Okay, you said a number of things there that I'm just curious about. First of all, you said that Dauphin County to start pays $6,000 more than we did.
Yes.
Okay, so how did that, when did they, because we went through this whole compensation thing back in
And we got put middle of the line. We got put somewhere in the middle of the range is what my understanding was. Dauphin County's at the top of the range. They currently have another opening, so I have concerns that we will lose another one to them potentially. I don't know that for sure. I have not asked if any of them have applied, but there's currently another vacancy in Dauphin County. When our compensation was redone, we were not put at the top of the scale. We went in the middle, which I agree, that makes sense. But our competition is right across the river.
Yeah, okay. well,
No offense to Dauphin County.
Well, the pool is shrinking, that's. this is the
Yeah.
bottom
Pool is
line.
shrinking,
Right.
so that's-
There are still schools, but they are mostly online, and there are none in our area. So even if court reporters are taking this schooling either in person or online, they're getting jobs in the immediate area of where they are. One of our applicants for the position, the two openings, one was from New York, and the other applicant was from one of the Dakotas. I apologize, I don't remember which one. So we're getting applicants from other states who are willing to relocate. The one applicant just was not going to work, and we did hire the other one.
Well, it sounds like eventually we were gonna have to make a transition anyhow. This
Yes.
is the wave of the future, so
Yes.
the time is upon us.
Yes.
I guess the question, so we're making a commitment to go this route, and this is gonna be, that's our future.
Yes.
So we wanna make sure, I think the question of whether we go the technical route or not is sort of moot.
Yes,
So
because we
now-
are required to have a full and complete record of
So the
the,
question now is how do we best make that transition?
Right, yes.
So we're comfortable with what we're choosing here so that we are going to.
I am,
I don't want to be faced with a situation in 2 years where it's like, oh, everything's changed, so we're gonna rip this out, we're gonna start over.
FTR has been around for a very long time.
Okay, that's-
In fact, I believe Delaware County, 25 years has been using
Really?
recording. Yeah, they got rid of court reporters a very, very long time ago. But we went to Adams County
Did you ever
and,
look at it previously? Did we ever consider making this transition? I didn't know.
We put something in dependency masters
and that's
a
been,
few years ago, and that's a waste of time.
they need to have this installed as well, yeah.
So this is like the new standard?
This is the, yeah,
Well,
this,
the standard existed before, we didn't
right,
use it.
yeah.
Right.
What we're doing in the dependency
This is the
program.
standard within the technical.
Yes,
Technological solution, okay.
And like I said, right now, the only courtroom that has the technological capability of having this installed is courtroom 2. But again, that would get us over the hump. We would have it installed in courtroom 7 when it's built, but we do need to have some technological upgrades done to the other courtrooms to get them to the point. The tech in courtroom 4 is 10 years old, 11 years old now.
Yeah.
So it's not, it doesn't have the right processors, it doesn't have the right technology to install
And
this.
none of our court reporters are spring chickens.
They're-
We only have one in our 40s, the rest are not far from retirement, so we're probably talking the next 5 years.
I know of at least 2 that are going to retire in the next 2 years.
What's
So
your
we need to be
plan to
ready.
roll out for this then? So we would take, how many years really for us to essentially implement? all these?
We did receive an estimate, and I had given it to Mr. Bremen with a capital request, and it was Mr. Bremen, and was, yeah. It kind of stalled in the water and never went any further than Mr. Bremen. We did receive estimates from Sage regarding what it would take to, Sage works very closely with FTR on several projects because Sage is kind of the premier courtroom, and FTR is like the premier court recording. So they know each other's standards. That to what would be required in each of the courtrooms to bring them up to speed. Now, this is a year old. I asked them for an updated quote, but at the time, a year ago, there was a quote of $69,000, and there's some change there and stuff, but $69,000 to bring the other, and actually I apologize, this includes courtroom 2. Courtroom 2 has already been done, so this would go down by about $10,000. So $59,000, $60,000 to upgrade the remaining courtrooms, 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
How much per courtroom?
It's approximately $10,000 per court. There's some fluctuations with the newer courtrooms are slightly less. Courtroom 4 is slightly more because it's the oldest. About $60,000 to bring all of the courtrooms up to the technological capability of having FTR installed. FTR
So that's like the background infrastructure for.
Yes, to be able to-
Plumbing on it. So
Yes.
whenever we get ready to do the courtrooms, there's gonna be obviously another investment made in something to
Yes.
plug into all of that.
Right, right.
Okay, do we have ideas on what the costs there?
Yeah, $60,000.
No,
No, that's
you
the,
just described it.
yeah, the underlying infrastructure is what we were talking about.
Yes,
So
that's,
now,
FT,
as
just
you-
put FTR.
What FTR?
Yes, I actually have a recent quote from FTR when we were looking into this and getting ready. The cost for FTR
Per courtroom.
per courtroom is about $4,000 for the software. And then IT would need to provide a desktop And Alan, do you remember what you told me the desktop cost
Oh,
was?
it's what, about $1,000 for a desktop?
Yeah.
So-
We will have to keep in mind storage space to provision because of the archiving. So-
There's nothing
Yes.
unique about those desktops versus whatever people buying in quantity already. Yeah, okay.
No,
I'm
more server space.
asking, how much will we save in court reporting salaries?
Not as much as you think. I'm actually also working on a study. I've asked
Well,
other.
that's gonna really piss off our court reporters.
Well, let me finish. I actually asked the other counties, I sent a request out on my listserv for any county that is using court recorders to please send me the job descriptions and the salary requirements. The current, I only received 3 back so far, and 1 is so far out of line of the other 2, I sort of
So
disregarded.
what kind of responsibilities, I mean,
They
what
do-
kind of skills do they have to have?
They have to be able to transcribe, they have to be able to generate the court orders. So they basically, again, the only part they don't do is the actual using the steno machine in the courtroom. They're following the audio, they're documenting who's speaking, they're making notes about what's going on, they're putting a flag in if the judge dictates a court
What's the
order.
cost?
They are about a
Do they have some
B21,
kind of
which is about
certification
50.
then?
I'm
Do they
sorry?
have some kind of certification or training that
Yeah,
that they
required.
have to go through?
Yeah, required in the
So-
law. Yeah, under the court reporting
So
rules.
it can't just be somebody graduated from high school, they're gonna have to get some
No.
kind of.
No, they have to have a certain typing speed and all that. I mean, they might be able to meet the requirements right out of high school, but we would have to, you're looking for a job after.
No, but I understand, so if there are certain criteria with this, I mean, I can understand why the
Yeah, well,
position might not be saving a lot of money.
right, well, I asked, I did hear back from what I thought was interesting. I heard back from Philadelphia and Greene County, 2 very, very different sized counties. Both of them, and then I sat with Jamie and my office and we went and tried to see where their pay, to do the right comparison, where the pay scales they gave me fell on our charts. It's about a B21 or a B22, which is 1635 to start.
Are
Is
there
it
enough of these
B22?
people out there? Are they?
Yeah.
I think we can get more of those. It's not quite the level of training. A court reporter is required to have a 2-year associate's degree in using that machine.
This sounds like
is
it'll be simpler, so maybe
Yes.
the field wouldn't be quite as narrow.
Exactly.
What we don't want is to, hire into this field and then all of a sudden we're getting wage pressure again.
I think these can be more trained internally and then get the certifications. This is less of the having to have a specific type of degree.
Where are the court reporters in that?
The court reporter band is actually outside of the normal band. They start at, they have their own band. Do you remember what they
Okay, well
start at?
then, would we be paying these?
Less.
Per pay? Would we be paying these people per page in transcripts, and per order?
I think that's a decision that would have to be made. The court reporters are currently paid by,
Well, because they're on a different band.
they're on a different band.
Yeah, it's highly specialized too, whereas something is less specialized.
But I mean, they could maybe be paid per page, but not as much as a certified court reporter. That would be a decision we would have to make when we did
All I'm
that.
saying is we gotta, if these people are gonna come in and making the same as our court reporters will listen, there's gonna be a lot of heartburn with the 5 court reporters we got left.
No, it's below.
Are they under contract, and how do we handle that?
Is that?
Are they
And
under
that's why
contract,
we're
or how do we
working on it.
handle that now? The court
No,
reporters?
they're employees.
They are
Mhm.
actual employees. Oh, that's.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where we have the huge plus up of the.
They start, and I'm ballparking off the top of my head, they start somewhere in the $23 an hour range. The 2 that I have from here start in the $16
Is
an hour
that
range.
base, or does that include?
That's base. That does not include transcript and court order fees. So we're talking $6 an hour.
All right, well, the transcript and court report, you should bump that hourly rate up.
Significantly, but it varies per court reporter because every judge has a different workload, so we can pull those numbers, but, and of what we've spent this year, it's sometimes they make an extra couple $100 a pay, on court orders and transcripts, sometimes a lot more. The Anderson trial is really bumping up a couple.
If we're gonna transition to this new system, then we need to make a commitment to transitioning to the new system. And, it sounds fine, to let everybody, when they retire.
Right.
All right, do we have an idea of where any of these people are in terms of their trajectory?
I know of at least 2 they're planning to retire within the next 2 years, I believe.
Okay.
We've got, what?
But they're all eligible to retire, except for 2.
5. All but 2 are eligible to retire.
The 2 newest are not
You
eligible.
said that this technology is not necessarily new, it's been in place for a while.
Yeah.
How many other counties are using it?
There are several. I know Delaware, Adams has it, and I know there's several more, and that's part of the survey I just sent out, but I haven't heard back from everybody yet. Philadelphia and Green are using.
Did you say you observed this in Adams County? You went,
We went and observed, yeah, we actually sat in court. The judge made us sit up behind the bench, which was kind of embarrassing, but Judge George. But I went actually to Franklin County as well. They're looking into adding it as well.
If we, one of the reasons why I asked how many counties are using this, because along the lines, I think what Gary asked, is, you know, if we jump and we do this and we make this investment, and then something else comes along, you know, it's the next best thing.
Kind of like with our courtrooms.
Yeah.
I mean, how many
Yeah.
times, my courtroom was just done a few years ago, it was obsolete already.
Technology changes
Well,
very
I guess
fast.
what I'm asking is, in other words, are we ever going to reach the day, or do you think we might reach the day when essentially we don't have an individual, you know, functioning in a courtroom, and this is all just recorded or?
Well, that's what this is getting to. Though there has to be a person there monitoring the equipment,
That's the
but,
question.
yeah.
Are we don't need a person?
I don't think so, because you're always gonna have attorneys who try to talk over each other, and situations where someone needs to kind of, that's what the court reporters, that's part of what they do as well. They make sure that the record is being maintained in a way that a transcript can be created.
Well, I think, at least going forward, we're only asking for 2 courtrooms now, so the investment isn't major if things do change in the next couple of years.
Do we have like a plan of action outlining the cost, salary cost difference, not hourly difference, but yearly difference?
I'm working on the job description, and we'll have to run that through
Yes.
HR. Like I said, I have only heard back from 2 or 3 counties, so I'm waiting to get some more so I can pull a job description together and then run that through HR to get the ones that we have received. Again, when we compare what they pay to our salary scale, they're kind of falling in the same
Yeah, so-
B21, B22.
so net, it's not gonna be a whole lot different. other
I
than
don't think so.
Than the hardware investments.
Right, and again, the software itself is 4,000 plus another 1,000 or so for the computer.
Is
Again,
that-
those are
Is that,
The software was, the infrastructure is 10,000.
right,
four for the software and
is
then
that per
1,000
courtroom?
per quarter. Yes.
So it's a license or something?
Yeah, the software licensing.
$4,000 license
Yeah.
per courtroom.
Yes.
That's,
No, that is not per year. That is the upfront 4,000 by, the annual licensing is, and I don't think you pay it the first year, it's $789 per year.
Software upgrades, maintenance, all that stuff.
Included, and if we do that maintenance
It's not
agreement, they
spares,
said it should be
software
all
contract.
included in that, yes.
So for 7 courtrooms, with everything, you're looking at about $100,000.
I'll trust your math on that, because I'm not doing trying to do it in my head right now.
If they were all done at once, which they
It-
won't be.
No.
no.
How's all that sounding to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Pretty standard.
we've had several conversations. I've been involved with some of the SAGE meetings as well, so as well as Adam and Jess over there. We're on board with the technology. We have part of the infrastructure with their audio systems already are there. This is just like kind of upgraded those. Some courtrooms more than others because of what they already have existing.
I want to jump in. You know, we're not happy with that.
Yep, agreed, and that's part of the reason that SAGE was in just recently. They did some sound testing. I think Melissa's expecting some quotes back to get some more definitive numbers and more specifics on some of the courtrooms, because some of the courtrooms are,
Well, I mean, I don't, this may not be the place to raise it, but I'm a little upset that, I mean, when they install it, it's not rocket science. They should have installed something that worked.
right,
To begin
and
with.
part of this process is getting rid of the vendor that we're not real happy with and bringing in
Okay, it's
SAGE.
a different
It was a
vendor.
different.
Bringing SAGE to unify some of that stuff. We're talking about some courtrooms might need sound panels, some courtrooms just need to tweak the speakers. I mean, the vendor had a lot of responsibilities that they didn't really come through with. So I think there's some things we can do to fix that. And I think Melissa has gone through that process with SAGE. We're just trying to, I don't know where they're at with that, but I would expect something back somehow soon.
Yeah, I asked them maybe last week for an update.
I mean, that's the goal, is that in order for the audio system and the FTR stuff to work, you need good sound quality. And that's part of the issue with all the courtrooms. So courtroom 2 that was just done, I think they made some leaps and bounds in that courtroom. But that's, all the courtrooms need really to have a focus on sound quality.
And you say there's also gonna be acoustical challenges there, but
Correct.
that's a real science.
But
They
isn't
should
that
be
part
able
of
to.
That's part of it.
That's part of
Yep.
it.
Okay.
Part of that
Some,
quote
yeah.
was to put like some acoustical panels on the walls in some courtrooms, and then other courtrooms not. So it just depends on the structure of the courtroom.
Everyone's different.
Yeah, the courtrooms 1, 2, and 3 especially were not designed for modern AV equipment. They were.
But I have confidence in Sage because they do a lot of churches as well that have the vaulted ceilings and the big volume of spaces. So, I mean, I have a lot of confidence in them coming in here and doing a sound study and then providing a good solution.
And before we went with State and talked to Sage, we conferred with them and asked what their experiences were with IT's dealings
As
with.
far as support
whether or not
goes, they're leaps and bounds above the other vendors, so, and they're CoStar's compliant, so there's a lot of benefits to using them.
So we're only talking like about $5,000 for courtroom 2 and 15 for courtroom 7.
Some of that new stuff too is self-tuned as well, so, they'll know.
It was interesting to see the sound testing they did. It was
Oh my gosh, it was.
pretty interesting
The new stuff's pretty
to
amazing.
watch that process.
Okay. One question I have for you is in terms of putting in the plumbing, is there any major needs there, drilling?
Most of the infrastructure is probably already in place based on the conversations with Brent from maintenance.
Okay, so you talked to those guys and they took it.
Yeah, there may be a little bit here and there, but I think most of the cavities that they've already put in place are there. I think courtroom 4 may need some stuff because it doesn't have maybe as, I guess I can't remember.
Yeah,
exactly.
courtroom 4 had the least. That was the first courtroom that, when I first became the court administrator, had any kind of upgrade done at all. And it was the bare minimum when we put it in. And it's definitely not up to snuff of what the other courtrooms.
But we have been in conversation with John's staff.
Okay.
They've been.
So we could do all that in-house, there's not like another contract hanging down here.
No, maintenance was able to do a lot the last time they're on board to do what their pieces they can. So.
Anybody else have any comments? Dana, Sandy?
So my only question is this to get the courtrooms where you want them as a whole, or is it just a piece?
This is the minimum required to get the courtrooms able to use FTR. We asked for a specific, I found my FTR thing. This was specific to what is necessary to install court recording software in the courtroom.
But is it sufficient to make Judge Maslin happy?
No.
Okay.
So what do we need to make Judge Maslin happy?
They are doing a quote on that as well. I have not heard back from them yet. They came in and did a study on the sound quality in courtroom 1. They seemed confident they could make some adjustments that would improve it without, to bring it up a little bit, not necessarily with adding sound panels and stuff, but to bring it up based on just revamping where some of the mics and where some of the speakers are aimed. I'll give you an example. One of the issues, and we didn't notice it, even not being sound people, we don't pick this up. One of the speakers is aimed over everyone's heads. Well, so it bounces off the back wall and then comes, so it's creating, they're like, well, if you would angle that speaker down where it was actually aiming into the gallery, you wouldn't have that, I didn't understand it at first. When he's explaining what sound does, it made sense. So when the other vendor installed this, the speaker is at an incorrect angle, according to Sage.
You figured it'd fall by the time it gets to the.
I don't know what they were thinking, but once the Sage guy explained why that was wrong, it made a lot of sense. And do you remember that? Yeah. And so when you're looking at it, they said they believe that there is a lot they can do to improve the quality, even without adding a bunch of extra pieces, but just coming in and doing some adjustments to speaker location, speaker angle, that kind of thing. And that's going to be a lot less expensive than a whole big sound panel technology. So we asked them to give us a quote on that, to try that first. And let's see how much that improves it before we throw into, let's spend, sound panels and all this other things that may not be necessary to improve the quality.
So So
Is it
then-
Sage they're the ones who, okay.
They were not the ones who originally installed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then does that get to where the district attorney and the judges will be happy with the audio visual?
I certainly hope so.
They never.
Yeah, not the visual piece. So
The visual piece is a want at this point, not a need, and is not, now that's gonna be, Sage was gonna give us a quote on some tiers. We've got the quote necessary for FTR implementation, we've got the necessary to bring courtroom 1 up to reasonable levels of acoustics, and then there was the want piece, which was certain things that would just improve the quality, but don't necessarily. Judge Maslin's TVs are too small. When this was originally, and we met the specs of what the judges sort of asked for, but once they realized it was there, what other things they could use it for, you realize that those TVs are too small. The jurors can't see those TVs very well from the whole way across that room. He needs a panel like 2 and 3 have, the big panel TVs. That's sort of a want, but it would really improve the process in that courtroom. So it's on the, be nice to have.
Can't rig up a secondary panel just close to the,
We looked at that, and the way everything is set up in there, it was not gonna work because there's nowhere to put them without blocking access or creating some sort of hazard with because we talked about putting individual screens in the jury box.
virtual reality.
Yep, but our jury boxes weren't built big, the jury boxes in other courthouses that have that, the jury boxes are much bigger, so there's room for a stand, and I think ours are already tight, even
I
without.
don't know that you need one for each one, but it just strikes me a little odd. I could never put a screen closer, but that's okay. Virtual reality's good. You can, Mass could have hair back.
No comment.
He knows I mean it. Nice as possible.
Anybody else have any concerns, questions? All right, so we'll get what we need to the right people, and we'll move on.
If you're going to be, I got a courtroom full of people.
Better get to them, Joe.
It's an adoption, so it's a good thing.
Was that the cross up in there?
See you.
All right, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Take care of it.
Okay, moving to the next part.
Was that the one? Next part, oh, that's me too. Text notifications. We went mandatory in July of 2018. Since it went mandatory, comparing the 6 months after mandatory to the 6 months before, we actually saw a 28% decrease in failure to appear warrants issued during that time frame. If you compare July to December 2018 to July, December 2017, it's a 24% decrease, depending what you compare it to. We're looking at either 24 or 28%. And at this point, we still don't even have all of the defendants receiving notifications yet. We are working on continuing to increase that. So, I mean, in my mind, it's definitely working. We're looking at some additional metrics with CCAP. The system currently does not receive warrant information, so I have to generate a report from CPCMS, provide it to CCAP, and then they have to try to match everything back up. But they, Heather Heister, Heather Heister is very positive about what's come out of this so far. They have other counties interested based on our preliminary results in getting into the program as well, which would actually only improve everybody's results because, not sure if you guys are aware, but a defendant or a participant is only in the system one time. So if you have a case in 3 counties, you only have 1 person record. So as new counties come up, if they have people whose information we don't have, all of that will merge together, which means it'll kind of snowball on itself. Say Dauphin County would buy, we share a lot of defendants with Dauphin County. They would have all of the information we already have entered in there as a head start. We have no head start because nobody else is in it before us. But I'm encouraged by a 24 or 28, depending where you want to compare it, decrease in failure to appear warrants. I did confer with the Sheriff's Department to make sure that the data from CPCMS was accurate. They do not track warrants the same way we do because they don't care as much, whether it's a failure to appear or a failure to pay. To them, it's a warrant. But we were able to find some commonalities, and they are showing the reduction in those type of warrants as well.
So, the question I had, I've been looking over your materials and also what we presented in the PowerPoint, back in May of 2017, and then the contract with CCAP. And it appears to me, and I don't know, let me ask this, but we were given the examples of what occurred in other jurisdictions around the country, in Oregon and Colorado, and King County, Washington, Flagstaff, Arizona. Did we ever check to find out whether or not it was mandated there in terms of the notification?
They did it differently. And that, we didn't check. They did it differently. They did not have any kind of defendant sign up way. They actually many of them did it in a much more manual way. They would literally go into each file that was scheduled for next week, and they would find the defendant's phone number and call them, or send out a postcard to everybody. We have addresses on almost everybody, except people who may already have a warrant. We took it we looked at it differently with CCAP of sending out the text and the emails. And so they actually had that information for every defendant that they were contacting. But it's a much more labor-intensive process because someone actually has to pull those files, find the contact information. They were doing phone calls or postcards.
Okay, so they were doing like a manual notification?
More of a manual type notification, yes. And with us going the technological route using text and email, we don't automatically, prior to this, we were not automatically collecting that information from defendants. So the files didn't already have that information. We had to start getting it. So that's where we're still working on that. The DJs are collecting that information as defendants come in for preliminary hearings. The Sheriff's Department also has it as part of their intake packet at the prison. So when a defendant is incarcerated, that is part of the information they have to fill out when they come in, and then that information is transmitted to my office for entry into the UCM system.
Well, I guess you would probably agree that, where we went wrong initially, and I guess that's why this is a pilot, is, the specs indicated that essentially that the offender would opt in to
Yes.
receive reminder notifications as opposed to having it be a mandatory requirement.
Yes.
And I was happy to see that, Judge Guido issued this order to the MDJs, and, that all defenders will provide their email or their cell phone number. So that's now happening?
Yes, it is, all of the DJs have it. We actually just changed recently, they were mailing it out with their hearing notices. Most of the defendants were not bringing the form back with them when they came in for their prelims, so they would then have to hand them another one. We stopped that. I said, stop mailing them out. Because they're not bringing them back anyway, it's just a waste of time and effort to put them in the mailings. They are now just providing that directly to the defendant when they appear in the office and having them fill it out there, which is basically the same result because the defendant wasn't bringing it back with them anyhow.
At the time we were looking at this proposal, we had seen a 4% increase in failure to appear from the prior year.
Yes.
All right, and then while we were talking about this proposal, when we concluded 2017, we actually had a 70% increase in failure to appear. We went from 762 failures to appear to 1,293 failures to appear.
Yes.
Now, I'm assuming that this program didn't really get started until toward the latter part of it.
We didn't even start until November of 2017. So the first forms went out and we started communicating with defendants about the program end of November. So no, we would have only had about 1 month. And when we ran the numbers as we were going through the first 6 months or so of this, when it was voluntary, we had less than 100 defendants sign up voluntarily. So that shows you where there was practically nobody signed up to do it voluntarily. We took that information to the Board of Judges, and that's when the decision was made to make it mandatory and have it handed out at the DJ offices to try and catch as many at that point as we could. And again, we added the prison to that so that we could catch people as they were coming in that way as well.
Well, and I mean, and then just one comment, I appreciate your reaction to this. But, you know, the data you gave us, you know, essentially showed half of the year. You know, showing a 28% reduction in the same time period the year before, right?
24% for the same period the year before, 28% if you compare it to the first half of 2018.
But if we, even if we take the reduction for those 6 months, which comes down to, you know, was 558 from July to December of last year, okay, and multiply that times 2, you know, it's well above where we thought we were going to be with respect to savings. We haven't saved anything yet. You know, this data showed us that over a 3-year period, we would save $790,000.
Well, if you take the difference between 2017 and 2018 timeframe is 179 warrants, July to December, July to December. At $1,200 per warrant, the cost avoidance is $214,000. And the $1,200 was the figure we used in that presentation as well.
I understand. No, what I'm saying is that we had, if you look at these numbers, in 2016, we had 762 failures to appear.
Okay.
Okay. In 2017, we had 1,293. In 2018, we had 1,340.
Yes. The number did go up as total for the year, but the second half of the year has started bringing it down.
But what these numbers showed was 2016, it cost us $914,000 for 762. You know, we haven't seen a reduction in failures to appear yet.
Yes.
You know, in terms of the annual.
In terms of the annual, no, but we haven't been up and running for a full calendar year either.
I know, but we're still not going to reach below, it doesn't look like below 762.
No, but without this program, we would have had an additional 179 warrants, give or take, issued, or more. I mean, this is only the difference between those time periods. And that's part of what the other data we're working with CCAP on. How many of the people who had warrants issued got notifications, and how many people, and vice versa, how many people we did issue warrants on that didn't receive notifications.
Okay, does the, now if I'm correct about the contract, essentially, is that still ongoing, the contract with CCAP?
I'm sorry, is it what?
Is the contract, is the way I was looking at the contract with CCAP, it essentially, you know, it didn't necessarily say that it was continuing. Is it continuing today, the contract with CCAP?
We do not owe CCAP any money as of today.
Right.
The program is still operating as normal, as a pilot program. The goal of CCAP is to do a case study on our stuff,
And that's what we're working on.
bring in some other counties to join the program, and then in the end, there would still be an ongoing cost because it's a software package, but it would be reduced based off of multiple counties participating in the program.
Okay, yeah, part of the proposal was that CCAP would like to see 6 months of data to conduct case study and show the return on investment.
And that's what we're working on now.
So we're doing that now.
Yeah. I've been providing some data to Heather
So we
Fleeser.
didn't provide them then with the first 6 months of data. We're providing them.
We pretty much decided after we realized only 100 defendants signed up, we had to kind of regroup and start over kind of in the July timeframe. Just voluntary wasn't working.
Okay. So you're saying that this is more cost avoidance as opposed to what we, at least some of us might have thought, we're actually going to see a reduction in cost.
I believe that's how it was presented, as cost avoidance. These are things that aren't going to happen now, that may have happened prior to the program being implemented.
Now, here's a chart that says potential cost savings.
Savings or cost avoidance, it's staff time is not being spent rescheduling a hearing, appearing in court a second time because a defendant didn't appear the first time. It's a defendant not spending the night in jail. It's a sheriff deputy not having to go out and pick them up because they showed up the first time, instead of having a clerk of court, a court reporter have to generate a court order to issue a warrant, the clerk of court's issuing the warrant, the sheriff's, there are multiple departments and multiple steps involved in this process that, to me, cost avoidance and cost savings are interchangeable here, whether definition-wise or not. These are costs that are going to happen if we issue a warrant. All of those steps are gonna have to be taken. For every warrant that we don't issue, those people don't have to do that work.
All right, so,
So I'm not sure
and
that's
we can
clear.
analyze, it. No, I appreciate
Yeah.
that, Melissa, but I mean, it is kind of interesting, because I think we've heard that our caseload has decreased.
Our caseload has
So,
decreased
I-
from 16, 17, but it is still on the upward trend from the prior years.
But we've almost, like I said, there was 70% increase in warrants in 2017, and they're still going up. I'm sorry, failures to appear.
Failures to appear.
Yeah, failures to appear. And I just, at least I had assumed we actually were going to cut the number of failure to appears, the actual numbers.
But
You know,
But we do, if you look at the 6 months as two separate time periods, it is going down. I don't have a calendar year where this thing was up the whole time to be able to say, for this
Well,
year
you-
it was this, we
you
only
will.
have. I will, but not for another year. I mean, I'll have another 6 months
well,
come
yeah, you
June,
should
July,
know- You should
but,
know by the middle of
and I'm actually.
years, because then you got a full, then you got. a full
Well, and I
year.
can tell you, I track this every month. In 2018, January, there were 202 failure to appear warrants issued. In January of 2019, there were 104. 202 to 104. In February of 2018, there were 122 warrants issued. In February of 2019, there were 101. Now, not quite the same dramatic decrease as January, but it's still lower than the same month last year.
We have 4 more months to get a full year in.
To basically get a full wrap. But you still can't look at the year-end numbers because we started halfway through a year. We have to compare 6 months to, I'd have to go back and figure out half of 27 or 27
So
years.
the little chart that's on the elevator downstairs that it talks about encouraging offenders to sign up, because it sounds like it's a voluntary.
Yeah, we need to
program.
cross all the voluntary
So,
parts.
and anyway, I'm glad to see that it's now it's a requirement. I do think that based on the numbers, that's where we made a mistake somehow.
I agree. I think that was a mistake, but that was it was a compromise piece with all the departments involved to, let's see how this goes. But it wasn't very hard to convince some of the other departments that were less than thrilled about voluntary when they saw the numbers that they just weren't signing up. We're getting them now. We still miss a few. We try to catch them. We're trying to catch them at as many points as we can. The system, we actually did talk to CCAP a few months ago, and the system has now changed that even if, the way it was set up was we had to actually turn it on for each defendant. When we entered their cell phone number and we entered their email, address, we had to click a button to turn it on. We talked to CCAP because there are multiple people entering information into this system. If someone else puts a cell phone number in that field or an email address, the system runs a program, I think weekly, that actually will turn it on automatically. So if another department, probation, whatever, catches a cell phone number for one of these people and enters it in the system, the next time that query runs, it will actually turn it on automatically. We don't have to go in and manually turn it on. So that was a change that we had CCAP make that has been very helpful. So that runs periodically and basically flips the switch on everybody who might have the information there but who hasn't been automatically turned on. So we're trying to catch as many of these people at as many of the points in the process as we can. There are still, even with these results, there are still a lot of defendants who are not signed up, and that's part of the numbers that CCAP's working on right now, comparing how many we have signed up versus how many still we haven't caught, and then figuring out how we catch those people in the process. I mean, my staff can't go up and sit in all 6 courtrooms and try and get everybody, but.
And I get confused by technology all the time, so forgive me. But
Then we're not gonna hire you as a
part
court
of
reporter
the,
over
part
here.
of the, is it correct that part of the software was designed to the point where the person checks as to whether they want to receive?
No, not the person, us. We have to go in, when we would enter that information, we had to click a button that said, I forget what it says.
Because it was voluntary, they didn't
Right.
always have an option to check a box, or they had to manually make
Right.
that decision.
Now it just turns it on. If those fields are filled in, it will just turn on. We changed that shortly after the voluntary
Right.
thing. We talked about that. What if somebody else puts information in there? We want it to pick those people up.
And that's part of the benefit of having a UCM application where probation and public defender and courts all share a similar system. You can get that different data entry points.
Right.
Unless the two questions, it's
Yes.
obvious the FTA warrants are decreasing. Is there any other reasons that would be causing that decrease other than?
I was actually thinking about that, and I really don't know, which is why I'm saying at this point that I think this is showing promise. I think we need more time on it. I think we need some of that other data from CCAP. Once they're able to analyze I'm specifically interested in how many of the people who got notifications did we still end up issuing a warrant for versus how many warrants were issued on people who didn't get notifications. I think that's going to be a little more important in telling us whether this specifically is helping, and they're working on that now. I think it needs more time. Some of it, one of the other things I've talked to Heather about is looking at caseload comparisons, as far as whether or not fluctuations in the caseloads are affecting this, which is why, I kind of went back 2017, 2018, and I'm adding each year so we can look back over those years to see what those differences are. But we want to add caseload into that as well to see if fluctuations in the caseload are affecting the number of warrants.
Okay, is an FTA warrant manually distributed, manually served?
You mean on the defendant? Yeah, the sheriff would have to go out and serve them with it. The other way they might get picked up is if there's a warrant out and you get pulled over on a traffic stop, they run your plate and, oh, you're Gary Eichelberger and there's a warrant for your arrest, you'd be arrested at that point. They might not have the warrant in hand, but they have it. And then when we would go pick them up and they'd be taken to the prison, the warrant would be served. So, sorry, Gary.
How was the cost avoidance of $1,200 per warrant estimated? That seems nice.
We used the other jurisdictions around the country that have done these studies all came in at around that figure for a warrant. So it's actually low because it's very old too. It's based on old salaries and some of those studies were from 2007, 2008, or older that had done these. So we took their figures and kind of created an average, and that's where we came up with the 1,200.
Dana, do you have any comment on that?
No, I wasn't part of the process. Just learning today about it.
All right.
Well, I think it's important that the judge's order be upheld.
Yes, yes. And I said, we are still working on ways of catching some of the one, I hesitate to say fall through the cracks, but the DJs are picking up all the new cases. We're working on ways of catching people who have cases that have been in the system for a while. We're still working that out. But again, it's kind of a manpower issue. We have to figure out the easiest way to get to the largest group of people and get that. I mean, we are doing very well at the DJ level. They're getting a lot of those back. We get them in daily from the DJs for entry into the system. But there's some of the older cases and stuff, there's just not a lot of really great way to catch them and get it. So there are quite a few defendants who we don't have their information yet, but we are working on it.
Now, are they told when there's a failure to appear? When there's a warrant issued, are they told that they need to give us your email address or cell phone number?
At the prison, when they're picked up, when they're arrested at the prison, it's part of the intake packet. So if they go through the prison, we've asked the judges as well when defendants are picked up on warrants, and I know sometimes they forget. There's a lot going on when the defendant is picked up on a warrant. But we're trying to hit as many spots as we can and constantly trying to think of where else we can catch these people to get that information. And I said the one good thing is, again, with the shared system, if probation or the PD's office or anybody else enters that information in there, it will flip it on for that defendant when the next run happens. I think it was weekly that they were running that. Like over the weekend, we run that in like a batch process.
Well, I'm just thinking if they didn't show up once, they probably won't show up again.
Yeah, and that's
So-
what happens, yeah.
So, I mean, it would be good to collect the information when they're serving the warrant.
Well, it's done at the prison. The deputy gets the warrant, arrests them, takes them in, and then it's part of the intake packet of the prison. So administration takes care of it.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. Thanks, Melissa. Do we have any other business to discuss? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Adjourn, thank you.